Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening to our session here today. My name is Daylon, and I'm the founder of CuriousCore as well as the host for this session. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Sabina Fernandez, and she is a UX content design lead whose designs have unlocked millions worth of spending with diverse owner suppliers. And how has she done that? Through empathy, right? Where she has put herself in the shoes of her listeners and her readers to make the products and services that she has designed much better. And she previously worked in launching the experiences for Meta in the Asia Pacific headquarters. And she has also briefly moved to the San Francisco Bay Area where she continued to design with words and information, making enterprise software intuitive and user-friendly and meta. So her portfolio is not only that of the Asia Pacific, but also of global product. And before that, she has crafted content for both Yahoo, Audi, and Conde Nast. So we're delighted to have her here today to have her share with us her experiences as a content designer, as well as being able to grow her career and talking about something that she is very, very passionate about, which is curiosity and courage. So welcome to our show, Sabina.
Thanks, Dylan, for that lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here and see all of y'all and have this chat. It's great to be here.
Lovely. So yeah, I'm just really curious, how did you sort of make that transition? If we could start with that, from initially being in journalism and then eventually like ending up in tech and leading experiences in tech.
Yeah. I was a magazine editor and I studied journalism at university in Melbourne and RMIT. I know there's some Aussies in the house. I worked in magazines for 10 years, and that was my childhood dream to be a magazine editor. And I loved it. I worked on lifestyle magazines and fashion magazines like Her World, travel magazines like in-flight magazines for airlines that you travel on. And then I saw the industry being disrupted. I saw publishing being disrupted. It's like, 10, 15 years ago. Digital was becoming more and more important. And I didn't see um, publishing innovating fast enough. I was really interested and curious in the digital side of things, but the industry as a whole was, wanted to keep doing what it was doing. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna move with the times, and I'm gonna leave. And I started working in digital content, digital marketing, and that brought me to Meta, where I joined as a contractor, interestingly, in the marketing department, and was creating digital content for a campaign for the Olympic Games. And while working on this project and working on this contract, and a recruiter at Meta approached me and said, "Would you be interested in this role as a content designer, UX content designer?" I ended my contract early and was converted to full time. And I mean, that's just the journey. That's just the logistics of what happened. But I think what's really important to say, especially for this audience, is that we bring a lot of transferable skills with us. And I always say that editing a magazine is very much user experience. A magazine is a product that people interact with. And as an editor, you're trying to hook them to read the page. You're trying to get them to keep turning, keep reading, and then buy the next issue. So it really is product design in a way. And we specialize in content as editors. We were working on things like information architecture, taxonomy, but we just didn't have fancy names for it. So it's transferable skills. And I say to anybody who's worked in any other industry who wants to move into user experience that remember you have transferable skills that you bring with you. And you just have to frame it as such when you're interviewing with recruiters or speaking to hiring managers. Uh, Nothing is wasted. Everything you do in your career can be applied in a different way. So that was my journey into content design, which I now absolutely love. And yeah, it's also become a joy of mine to work in this industry.
Awesome. And thank you for sharing, like in a brief, like your journey for getting into tech, which I'm sure some of us who are listening in could really relate to. what do you feel you had to evolve or learn very, very quickly as you made that transition from having, I would say, a skill set that's more focused on writing to something that it's about building products and services? Like what was the learning curve over there? Yeah.
The learning curve was in terms of the software we use. So I mean, every year there's a different tool, honestly. When I started, we were using Sketch. Now that, that is such a throwback just to talk about Sketch, and it's only been 6 years. So every year there was a new software that I had to learn and teach myself to become proficient at. Um, that was a big one. And then it's just, again, it's transferable skills. So the same, intuitive experience I wanted to bring, interesting content that I wanted to bring to magazines, I also brought with me into user experience content. I mean, I remember at the beginning, watching video tutorials of how to use Quip, another throwback. That was a big deal when I first joined Meta. How to use all the internal proprietary tools that Meta had to look at code and things like that. So I would literally sit there and watch 45-minute video tutorials on how to use these programs so that I could do the work I needed to do. So there was a lot of that, just getting more savvy on the tools and confident and comfortable with them. Um, Everything else, as somebody who consumes digital products, you're already a user. You've already used various software. You already have a mobile phone, so you understand all of those interactions. Code was a big learning curve, I'd say. So I, already knew a little bit of HTML, which I'm pretty comfortable at. Then I had to, get better at understanding a bit of JavaScript. And communicating with engineers is a big skill. Learning code is a part of that. So those are two major learning curves that I undertook and which I've now double clicked, triple clicked on in doing my master's, where I'm learning a lot of coding and a lot of product design. But yeah, I think those were the big areas, just the code side of things and the tool side of things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can certainly relate. I think we're off I think we're of the same generation where I also started using Sketch like when I started in my career, and now no one talks about Sketch anymore.
Exactly.
It's like Figma, and there's even some rumors that are saying, well, in future it's not going to be about Figma. In future, people are going to start on Cursor, which is
Probably.
coding from AI directly. So yeah, I think this is an excellent segue to talk a little bit about how AI is really changing the work you do as a product designer or even as a content designer. Because suddenly I see AI doing a lot of writing and can do it quite well in to a certain level of competency. What do you think?
I think AI is a great tool and partner for us that helps us to do our work better. And if you are if you are resistant to adopting new tools and new technologies, this is not the industry for you because things are constantly changing. As soon as you get used to it, it's gone and something else is coming in. So yeah, I think being afraid of AI is not advisable. See it as a partner and a tool. Do I think it'll ever replace the work we do? In my opinion, no. Because our superpower as designers, certainly as content designers, is empathy, putting ourselves in the shoes of users, as you said in my introduction. And AI is not able to do that yet. It might in 10 years. At the moment, it's not. AI can only learn from the information it's given. And empathy is not something that you can code. Try telling engineers that. But yeah, so we can use it as a partner. It's great in like often ask it to proofread my work and check for any mistakes. I've asked it to help me translate content. And I double and triple check that too because AI's first response is not perfect. You should definitely fact check a few times when you're working with AI. But I've also used it for coding design. So in my master's program, I had to build an app and had to design certain, flows and interactions. And I asked AI to help me code a upload box, which it did. So it's really good. I also asked it to format my portfolio. So I said, can you um, give me some code that automates all of the padding on my portfolio to make sure everything's in multiples of 8. Product designers will love this. Content designers, previously I didn't
Can
even,
actually do that. I'm
yes,
surprised.
you
You
can
can
do
right,
that.
and they stick with
Yes.
multiples of eight
Yes.
that you define.
I got that code, and again, there's a bit of back and forth. The
Right.
first response from AI is rarely correct. So there's a bit
Mhm.
of back and forth. I took the code, I put it into my portfolio backend. It didn't quite work. I said, "This is the error message I got. Claude, can you please fix it?" And then it said, "So sorry, Sabina, let me fix that." So it's a bit of back and forth, but it got there and it automated it, which I
Wow.
thought was super cool. So, and we're only touching the surface of what it can do for us. Right? It's
100%.
gonna, as the learning models get more sophisticated, it's gonna get even better. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I see it as a partner and a helper that's very useful and that gets rid of those boring tasks. It's very good at taking large volume tasks and doing them very quickly. Uh,
Mm.
when I was working at Meta, we were looking at how we could use it to make our localization and translation processes better, so that it could free up our time as content designers to do the real work, the real design work, which AI isn't there yet with. It can't solve complex problems in ambiguity. It needs extreme clarity, and it needs very, very detailed instructions. Working in tech, you often have no instructions. You get a deadline and like a broad brief, and then off you go. And only a human can do that. So do I think it's going to replace us? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a useful tool to automate, boring, laborious, time-consuming tasks? Yes, very much. So I use it as a partner. And certainly in my master's program, I've learned even more how I can work with it, how it can create data models and all sorts of really cool things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I think in case for those who are not designers and not that technical who are listening in, when Sabina prompts AI to do padding in 8 pixel multiples, it's actually a principle that we designers follow because there's a certain level of symmetry to the number 8, and if everything follows that figure, everything starts to look a little bit more pleasing to the eye. And yeah, right now AI can probably like they wouldn't know the principle, but if we direct
Mm.
them as what Sabina said, like working with them as a partner, the output of the work gets a lot better in this sense. And it's really interesting that you mentioned some of the projects that you were doing in terms of localization. And you also use this work where you said, okay, now that AI can actually help do the busy work, can help do the production work, you can focus on the real work. So can you elaborate a little bit? What does the real work entail?
Yeah. What I mean by that is the design thinking and sometimes we're given a problem as designers and we go off and solve it. Sometimes they don't know the problem and it's our job to diagnose it. So the actual design thinking of saying, okay, what's going on with this flow? What does this user's need? What is the job to be done? What are the challenges the user has? What are the limitations that we have as a product team? And how can we solve these? So that actual design work of going into the flow, auditing it, looking at what's could be improved, what's great, what needs to completely be removed, and then suggesting solutions for these complex problems. So, oh, this flow, it's taking a bit too long, and there's a few redundant steps that the user has to take. And the feedback we've gotten from the research is that the user really wants speed. That's their biggest priority in this flow. Okay, how can we give them speed? Let's take out these redundant steps and let's only prioritize these top 2 tasks that they said. So that kind of design thinking and complex problem solving is what we bring as designers. That's our special sauce, and that's the most fun work, in my opinion, getting into a room with product design and user research and engineering and mapping out the problems, sketching on the whiteboard. That's the most fun part of the job.
Yeah, it's collaborative. It
Yes.
uses human creativity in the process, and it's as you said, it's a process of also exploring your curiosity Yeah. Lovely. So we have a question from an audience member, and Courtney, who is asking, what AI tools have impressed you the most so far?
I'm going to be very honest and say um, they're all kind of giving me the same level of results. So I use GPT and Claude, Midjourney. Um, None of them have particularly blown my mind, I'm going to be honest, because they're all drawing on the same language models. They're all drawing on the same like content out there that exists that's teaching them to do what they do. Um, the really cool part, the impressive part is the prompts that we give them. And they only really impress you when you give them really good prompts. I've never used an AI tool and said, give me this, and had my mind blown by, oh my God, it's amazing. There's always a back and forth. There's always me refining my prompt. There's always me checking it with another AI tool and coming back. So I'm going to be honest and say none of them have given me anything more than I would expect. But I will say this is the opposite of the question you're asking. What I've seen that is a limitation of AI because it only uses what it knows and what is already existing. I was in my first course in my master's program creating an app for storybooks for children who are underrepresented. So I wanted to get illustrations of children in wheelchairs, illustrations of children from minority ethnic groups, illustrations of children with Down syndrome, things like that. And what I found was AI is extremely lacking in those representations because of what it has to work with. There isn't enough representation of diverse groups in the language models to begin with, in the AI to begin with. So they're not able to create something new. So for example, when I asked Midjourney, give me an image illustration of a young girl with Down syndrome, all of the images came back looking like a neurotypical person. So that was a good lesson for me in AI can only do what it already has. It cannot create something from nothing, which we as humans can do. So I'm sorry, Cody, I haven't been blown away by any of them. But yeah, they certainly have their limitations. And I think we'll be blown away as we continue to refine our prompts and we as humans learn how to communicate with AI better, because really it's down to our prompt and what we tell it to do. Um, so yeah, sorry if that answers not what you're hoping to hear.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about that. And you're right that the models are trained on massive volumes of data that are already there, that represent the majority of people. So yeah, when we're talking about minorities, which are underrepresented, they don't have enough data sets to correctly give you the output that you want. And your work at Meta, you were mentioning that you did quite a fair bit of localization projects. Wouldn't that also mean there's a certain degree of limitations if you had to use AI too as part of your work?
Oh, we didn't use the AI tools to translate at Meta. And one thing I want to clarify in case it's not clear is that I've left Meta. So I've recently left to pursue my master's. I was there for 6 years. And we didn't use AI to translate content. That would be, to speak plainly, that would be a disaster. It would not give us good quality translations. We used human linguists who did all of the translations, but we use AI as a tool to support the how should I say, the technical aspects of the localization process. Yeah. But in my own personal work, where I was trying to translate something recently, translate an email from English to Mandarin, I used AI as a support tool and triple checked it and double checked it and went back and forth, used multiple tools and got a really good result that even a human linguist was impressed by. She asked me what prompt did I use? And again, I said it wasn't just one prompt, it was several. It was a chain of prompts back and forth and using like a collection of tools to get it to that quality.
Yeah. I echo the same sentiment when working with AI to even do research work, for
Mhm.
example. Like I don't think it gets it right in the first prompt. And you
No,
still have to apply critical thinking, you still
very
have to
much.
challenge it and
Very
tell it what is blind spots. Jazz has an interesting question for you. So I'm not sure if you actually use AI tools as part of your work at Meta. But would there be like any kind of company policy or privacy issues that prevent you from using, AI tools while at Meta? Yeah.
Meta has an internal proprietary AI tool, which everybody used, and there certainly are privacy considerations. And to that end, there's a lot that I can't share about the processes at Meta, but we were very careful in what we tell AI, and I still practice this today. Um, and I would encourage everybody to be careful in what you tell AI about your personal information. Yesterday, I had a conversation with Claude where I was asking it to write something for me, and I gave it a source document. And then I said, Claude, I'd like you to, I don't want the document I sent to be a part of your learning model. And Claude replied, oh, you don't have to worry. None of the information you send me will be used for my learning. And I was like, yeah, I hope so. But I would encourage y'all to be really careful with what you give because it's learning constantly. Every interaction with it is a
I'm
teachable moment.
sure. I'm sure.
So yeah, you don't want to upload anything too private. And that was actually an interesting response. And I tested it on GPT and it said the same thing. It said, no, nothing you upload
Mm.
is used in our learning. But still,
Are they trained to say that? We don't know, right?
correct. Yeah, that's why my response was a tiny bit of humorous cynicism.
Mm.
But credit card numbers, these are things I would not give Claude. I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't give AI
Good
tools.
enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Singapore, not such a big deal, but in the US, and the UK, identity theft is a big thing. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be uploading ID, for example.
Mm.
I'd just be mindful of what information you're giving it.
Lovely. I think one of the things that I want to wrap up around AI is like Victoria's asking, do you have any tips to writing better prompts to get good results from AI? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Don't expect to get it right the first time. It's a conversation. It's a chain of instructions, and uh, make sure you do the chain. Make sure you keep the conversation timely. So you don't want to give it one prompt, go away, have lunch, come back, and then follow up because you just want it to be quick so the AI learns quickly and it gathers your entire conversation and gives you what you need. It needs context. So a chain would be my first recommendation. The second one is to be extremely detailed, extremely detailed. You're talking to a computer, and computers don't have the context of humans. So you need to give it all the context possible. There's no such thing as too long a prompt. So very, very detailed, and just imagine that you're speaking to a computer and you want it to understand everything you need, be exhaustive is what I'm getting at. Be exhaustive in your prompt. Be very clear cut, black and white. Don't say make the padding good. Say make the padding 8 pixels. Or don't say um, give me this in Chinese. Say give me this in um, traditional Chinese for Taiwan, for example. So exhaustive, a chain of prompts, and like don't take it so seriously. It's kind of a play. It's kind of an experiment. So you're giving it something, it's coming back. You're saying, how about this? How about that? Oh, that didn't work, Claude. I got this error message. Please, can you fix it? So yeah, it's just an experimentation. And it takes a bit of time. I wouldn't expect. I think both Dale and I have reinforced that don't take the first response. So if you want a really high quality output, it takes a bit of time and a bit of back and forth. So yeah, be exhaustive, have a chain of prompts, and be timely in your prompts. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I can certainly feel like rolling the dice sometimes when you're
Sure.
working with AI. And I think what we're trying to do is like kind of reduce that probability of it actually giving us an output that we don't actually want in that process. And one thing I recall fondly when we were having our initial call before this was that actually prompt engineering, you said prompt engineering is good communication, right?
Mm.
It's just telling someone how to do things properly and being specific about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, did you want to elaborate on that? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Prompt engineering is content design. Prompt engineering is writing. And I have a spicy, hot take, controversial opinion that it's called engineering because it's new and it's hot and it's valuable. But actually, it's writing. And just as in our when we're writing content for an experience, if we're giving an instruction to a user, we are exhaustive and clear and simple. We don't want to be opaque. We don't want to say upload an attachment. We want to say upload the relevant PDF to this application, for example. It's the same in prompt writing. So it's just, yeah, good communication, good content design, and being very clear, as simple as possible. Just like you wouldn't say, this is a throwback to my journalism school. You wouldn't say to your friend, "Did you see that blazing inferno?" You would never say that. That's absurd, right? You'd say, "Did you see that huge fire?" Right? We speak simply to be understood. We speak simply. And it's the same in good content, and it's exactly the same in good prompt writing. Just be simple and clear.
Yeah, as I'm speaking to you, I almost feel that's actually an advantage for people who do good writing and might have been trained in journalism to actually do proper prompt engineering as you're talking about it. Because I remember working very briefly as a freelance journalist myself, and although I didn't really go to journalism school, but I do remember my editors telling me like, hey, as you said, speak in plain language and give the right context and just don't fumble around with um, unnecessary information in
Yeah.
that process. And that really helped tighten the writing. And I think also it helps to give AI very clear instructions and outputs along the way. Yeah. So there is a very interesting segue for this question to sort of like the future of UX, right? So you're doing your master degree right now. And where do you see UX heading in the next 5 years? Yeah.
Ooh. Um, I think it will continue to be disrupted because that's what tech is. It's being constantly disrupted. And it's going to evolve into, yeah, how can we best use the available technologies to create the most efficient designs? I think efficiency is becoming increasingly important, and I'm seeing design systems becoming increasingly important. So not just designing an amazing screen, but designing a component or a small part of a screen which can be used multiple times, which can scale. So we'd rather not have a content designer writing a new thing every day. We'd rather say, okay, there's going to be 50 similar screens. How can we create a pattern, something basic that can be slightly adjusted, that's good quality, that can be used across several different screens, those 50 screens that we see coming in the next year. So creating some like a building block of UI that can be used several times with small adaptations. A metaphor I can say is instead of uh, drawing a picture every time, you're drawing the outline of the picture and then you're allowing it to be copied and adjusted. So these are what we call design systems and design components that can where you build one thing once and then it can be used many times. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. It's a
No,
little
that's good.
complex
I,
topic.
I think it's kind of like what I hear you say is like think about scalability. And would you say this also applies to writing? Like is there a way to create like frameworks or blocks of content design systems? Was
Very
that
much.
something you had to do? Yeah.
Yeah, we worked on this. So we call them patterns. And a building block or a framework. A good example is error messages. So there's maybe, let's say there's like 100 errors that can happen in the backend code. And they'll all be slightly different. And the takeaway that the person needs or the action the person needs to take might be slightly different. But they all follow a certain structure, and we want to communicate them in the same way. An error message is a unpleasant experience, and people tend to be in a state of mind that's a little bit annoyed when they get an error situation. So they're quite crucial in terms of content. So we would write the title of the error message, the structure of let me see if I can remember what was our structure. Something went wrong, and maybe detail of what that error was and then what they should try next. So you should try again, you should contact your administrator, you should go to the help page. So you might write a pattern for that. And in future, any content designer wanting to write an error message would look at that pattern and say, ah, Sabina's already created this one. It's in line to the company's standards. It's in the right tone. It's using the right level of empathy for the user. Now I can just add in what the actual error is and what action I want them to take. But I know that this is already a very, very good template that I can adapt from. And it's much quicker to adapt an existing template than to create fresh content from scratch. So that's an example of a content pattern that we might create.
That's a really interesting example. And there's a follow-up question from the audience asking, how many versions of that do you have to write to so that it was like scalable, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a
Do you
good.
have to test all the different edge cases? Yeah.
In an ideal world, you'll be able to test all the different edge cases. Often you don't have that capacity, you don't have that time, you don't have that resource to test. Um, so that's down to our skill as a content designer to say, how can I make this as correct as possible with enough flexibility for my peers to be able to adapt it? And it is quite difficult, and there is a lot of back and forth. You don't want to make it so precise that it can't be changed. And you also don't want to make it so general that it's useless. So finding that sweet spot is very much part of the skill. And you do that by getting feedback from your peers, fellow content designers. You work with product designers and product managers and engineers to get feedback to ensure that it's high quality. But pattern writing is a real skill and a real what I would say specialization of design, which I see growing a lot in the coming 5 years because there's a big emphasis in our current economy on scalability and on efficiency, and patterns and design systems are scalable and efficient. So that's something I really see expanding in the coming decade.
That's really great. And I want to do a follow-up question that Courtney asked earlier. What skills do you believe would be valuable for designers looking to future-proof their careers, right? So you're going back to school right now. I'm sure you're also learning a lot of new things. What kind of skills do you personally as a leader do you feel is important to future-proof your career?
Staying up to date with the technology and the tools is crucial. So if you're saying on your resume, I use Adobe Illustrator or uh what was that old school design system, Zeppelin, that's gonna
Oh my
cause
God.
a hiring manager. Yeah, we laugh, right? That's gonna cause the hiring manager to take pause. Like, is this person up to date with the current industry? So staying up to date with the technologies and the tools, just constantly being open to learn and experiment. Yeah, like just if you've never used Figma before, do a little tutorial on YouTube. There's tons of them online to teach you how to use them. Um, that would be one. Um, Another form of, and that includes AI. So experimenting with AI and being at least AI proficient, at least AI friendly. And you know what? Nobody is an expert in AI at the moment. This doesn't exist because the technology is too new. So it's all an experiment. You just have to be open and um, willing to show that you've used it a little bit in your work in some way and that you understand what it is, you understand how to interact with it. So technology and tools is one. And this is not a hard skill, is what I mean, we call them soft skills, but they're really so much more than soft. They're life skills. I think being curious is never going to hurt you as a designer. It's always going to put you in a good spot. And curiosity is part of constantly learning and constantly growing. If you're always open, you're always willing to learn, you're always willing to, you know what is your gap and bridge that gap. I realized, oh, okay, I'm really not that great at coding, and I think that could really support my career. Let's go to a master so I can, get better at coding and product design. So always being curious and open. This industry is being disrupted constantly. The one thing we can count on is that it's going to change. There is always going to be change. So you have to roll with that change. That's what I did when I saw, okay, publishing isn't really innovating. I'm going to go innovate. I'm gonna go learn how to write digital content. Um, so you just always have to be rolling with the pace, with the changes as they go. And that's easier said than done. It's a little scary. It can be quite overwhelming, but if you're curious, it's always going to put you in a position of learning the new thing, learning um, the new disruption. So I think staying curious, being open to the new tools and technologies, and knowing what you don't know and what you need to know, is really going to put you in good stead as a user experience designer.
Well, that's really excellent, and thank you for summarizing that in terms of like the core skills going into curiosity, which we'll explore in a moment to speak a little bit more about. I I have a simple request for those who are listening in. Okay. Yeah, so Sabina, earlier you mentioned the importance of curiosity as part of this process of growing and future-proofing your career. Yeah, tell us a little bit more, because today's theme is about curiosity and courage. Like, how has that played a role in your career? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think it's what has, if I may say, and this, I hope this doesn't land as bragging, but I think is what has set me apart as a designer, is because as designers, our biggest job is to be curious, is to learn. What does the user need here? What is the problem here? What does the business need here? What is the business requirement? What is the business challenge? Our our major responsibility is to be curious and to find out what is the problem we're solving? How can we solve it? And we can't create good solutions without being curious. So even when it's sometimes awkward, even when there's a situation at work where everybody's talking about a thing, nobody really understands it, I'm the person to go, what is this acronym everybody's throwing around? And that I'm that person who names the elephant in the room. And I don't mind looking like, I don't know, looking like whatever in that moment because it's helping me learn. It's helping everybody else on the call learn. Um, so you need to be both curious and courageous to do that. That's on a micro level. On a macro level, if you're advocating for the user, and this is a real life scenario where you're at work and you're getting pushback from a stakeholder who's saying we absolutely can't change that from a chevron to a button because our VP likes chevrons. And as a designer that the user really needs a button. The chevron is not right here. The chevron makes them think they're going to the next page. Actually, they need to submit something. So it is on us to advocate and say, well, that might be so, but what's going to result from that is that the user is going to lose out and we're not going to meet our metrics. We're not going to meet our conversion goal if the user doesn't know what to do and doesn't have the component that they require. And you have to steel yourself to um, advocate for the user, advocate for yourself as designers, advocate for your fellow designers, and speak up and say, actually, this is not okay. The skill, and when I'm continuing to learn, is how to do that in a professional, kind, polite way. And there is a way. Instead of saying, no, that's totally wrong, and how dare you, which is, I mean, we laugh, but in the heat of the moment, your emotions can take over, right? It's always to bring it back to objectives, team goals, and user benefit. So if you can say, well, we could do that, we could keep it as a chevron, and I'm sure that would make the VP pleased. But what the downside of that is that the consequence will be a reduction in our objective metrics. So the XXX metric might be reduced. And that's a good way to stand up for your user, be courageous in a professional, polite, kind way. Depersonalizing it. It's not about you and me disagreeing. It's about the work and it's about the goals, the team goals that we want to meet. So you do have to be courageous. And that can happen sometimes 10, 20, 30 times in a day, sometimes 5 times in one meeting. So it might be on that micro level, or it might be on a major level, speaking out and saying, this project is not going in the right direction. And I feel as a content designer, I'm no longer able to support this project. I'm rolling off it. And I've also said that. I've also said that where I don't think that it's a good use of my skills. And there's many other projects that I could be working on where I say, sorry, folks, I've got to prioritize something else. I'm rolling off this with my manager's support, of course, very important. And with professionalism and politeness. Um, so you do need to be courageous because we work in really fast-paced, really competitive environments with a lot of type A personalities. And design can get overrun if we're not careful. So you have to bring your steely spine with you. You have to take a little tiny risk of being disliked. People don't like it when you say no. And you have to kind of take that on and be willing to navigate that, be willing to say, okay, so maybe they're not going to like me so much in this moment, but when the results come in, I'll be able to say, this is the reason I was recommending that. So, yeah, I think courage, but also with a healthy dose of um, compassion and tact in our communication is our greatest tool as designers. And also sometimes the courage to let things go and say, you know what? I really don't like this content. I really don't like this email content, but this is a battle that I don't think it's worth my while to fight, and I'm going to let it go. I'm going to focus on the bigger picture. For the sake of this relationship, I'm going to let this content go. So the courage to, almost like overrule our own design instincts and say, all right, this one is going to be not so great, but I'm going to take that L, as they say in the Bay Area, take the loss, take the L. I'm just going to take it and move on because this is not a battle I'm going to win. It's not worth fighting. And that takes courage too. I don't know about y'all, but I get very passionate about my designs. So
I
sometimes the courage to go, okay, yep, cool, cool, cool.
I think you work with so much passion, and sometimes as creatives we get so attached to our work,
Yes,
right?
exactly right.
And not to say that we're egoistic, it's just that we really care about it, and we're very passionate about the output and the quality that we put out there. So but then there's this process, right? Especially working for larger organizations or working for difficult stakeholders, and might be a bit challenging to manage our energy and this
Mm.
process. So we have a question from the audience, how do you avoid burnout when you constantly have to fight and push for change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel that one right here. I get that. Um, the way to avoid burnout, and I wouldn't say I'm a huge expert, but I think is to choose one's battles. Yeah, and really be intentional about which flow or screen is worth fighting for, which email is worth fighting for, and which one you're just gonna let go. We're not brain surgeons. And sometimes we're so passionate that we maybe treat it like it's brain surgery. But yeah, just remembering this is a job, this is work, this is software, you know. Just taking that step back and saying, for the sake of my well-being, I'm gonna let this one go. That's on a day-to-day level in terms of managing the work. And then you have to do all those boring things like making sure you take time off and making sure you have a full life outside of work and you get your creative fix from something outside of work, that you're painting or doing pottery or woodworking or whatever it is that nourishes your soul. Don't expect your job to give you that creative joy. That's putting too much pressure on a job. Find it elsewhere and build a life rich enough outside of your job that your job isn't everything. Because don't tell anybody, but your job is not everything. It's just one small part of our lives. It's one small part of my life. My family, my pets, my personal joy and health are just as important and figures largely in my life. So yeah, choose your battles and remember it's just a job. It's just software. I'm continuing to
Love,
work on this too.
love your aspect, and I fully agree with your philosophy on managing your own inner state. And
Mm,
I love the philosophy of how you operate with tact as well. Um, and I'm just very conscious that we have quite a number of women in our audience. And as you mentioned, some cultures are very type A. There's a lot of men, and some of the people there can be quite aggressive. So how do you kind of balance that out, right? Like as a woman leader, as someone
mhm.
cares about her work. How do you apply it? Because if it's kind of like as a conflict, it can get very ugly and messy, and I don't think that's how it should be. But so I'm quite curious how you apply tact and your strategies to a situation like that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that question, Daylon, and thank you for being cognizant that that is an issue for us. That's a whole other topic, right? That could be a 2 hour conversation, but it's a tightrope we walk. It really is. I think at the beginning of my career, I very much went about it like a man, and I very much worked like a man because that just seemed to be the most efficient way to work. And for me, it was great. We have to recognize that we exist in an environment where our coworkers may not respond well to that, even though it's not fair, even though um it's a battle that our society continues to fight, but that's the reality. So if we're working in that reality and we accept that that's the reality, then um I learned to shift, to modulate my style, to use um my feminine skills of empathy, of understanding, of intuition. Intuition is a big one. And please don't misunderstand me. Of course, men have intuition too. I'm just saying that we should use it and we shouldn't tamp it down. Yeah, that's a really big question and it is hard. I would say make sure you surround yourself with female peers so that y'all can, rant and decompress. Be aware that this is the reality. It's not personal. It's not about me. It's just about the reality. So we have the tendency as women that when we are assertive and we're strong leaders, we tend to get the feedback that we're aggressive. And that is very triggering, right? Because if a man said it, it would be okay. But you just have to know that that's not about me. I'm not aggressive. It's just that in our culture, in our society, when a woman is assertive, this is how it's received. So yeah, know that it's a tightrope, know that it's a challenge, but it's one that we can navigate, especially if we have our female friends and peers to support us. Be a ally for our fellow female coworkers. So if you hear you're in a meeting and a female coworker of yours is interrupted, or if somebody co-opts her idea and claims it as their own, be the one who speaks and says, "Oh, I'm so glad you repeated what Ellen said." Or, "Oh, could we go back to Xiao Hua because she was in the middle of her sentence and I'd really hear what she liked to say." So we can help each other by giving each other community and speaking up for one another. No crabs in a bucket. Don't see women as competition. Yeah, we're crabs on the beach. We help each other. There's
And
plenty of
and
space.
can be allies in this process as well.
Please. Oh, we'd love for that. I'd love for you all to be allies. I've actually had a male coworker stand up for me once, and it was the best feeling. Oh my goodness, I felt amazing. And I separately went to them and thanked them and said, "I so appreciate that." Just as I thanked you earlier for even bringing up this question, Dylan. So yes, please be allies for us. We'd love
Of course.
that.
And yeah, so this sort of is a follow-up question from the audience member Jazz, and she's asking like, how do you resolve conflicts when working in a team? And if you have an example you could share, that would be great.
Yeah, wow. This conversation is getting a lot more deep than I thought. Very exciting. I actually gave a training to my coworkers on how to have difficult conversations. And it was really successful because so many of us struggle with it. So, the first thing you have to know is that conflict isn't bad. We grow from conflict. Conflict is the only way for us to learn about each other, become closer, and get better. So a disagreement doesn't mean the end of the relationship. It's an opportunity to bring the relationship closer and to learn something about your counterpart. So that's one. And then depersonalize it. It's probably not about me. It's probably about whatever's going on with this person. Let me be curious. Let me bring my attitude of curiosity to find out what's going on and how we can bridge this gap. So it's all about just depersonalizing it, keeping it as, this happened in this project. We really need the other thing to actually happen. How can we do that together as a team? How can we solve that together? Um, that's what I would say. The topic of the title of the training I gave was Stride Towards the Problem. Don't run. Don't run when you're still emotional and angry. Don't run away in the opposite direction, but stride confidently towards the problem and say, hey, we kind of need to talk about this. Is that okay? Please, can we get 30 minutes together to solve this? Um, yeah, so just don't avoid it. Practice. I practice with a friend, with a trusted coworker, with my manager. I have notes when I go to a difficult conversation. I 100% have notes of dot points I want to cover, things I absolutely shouldn't say, questions I should ask. Um, and know that if the conversation goes south and if the other person is not responsive, you tried, you did your best, you did the professional thing to address the issue. You can't control how they respond.
100%. I really am loving all these nuggets of philosophy that really it does show me like also the inner work that you have done for yourself, and it's amazing to see it. I just want to bring to everyone's attention as well on how Sabrina really brings tact to her communication. It's not just like pushing through head on from what I sense. Even like the way you talk about it, it's not offensive, right? It's just being very matter of fact and being very tactful in the approach, which I think is very suitable for resolving different types of disagreements, or even like selling an idea that you believe in your work itself. And that's a really great wisdom that I recall as you're speaking to me about it, about managing conflict and resolving conflict. And it was this story of a retail store manager who's trying to handle an angry customer, and that retail store manager um, started getting really really feisty in that process. Not to the customer, but like, oh, I can't believe that they treat you like that, stuff like that. So the retail store manager got angry on the behalf, and that the wisdom of that story is that there can only be one person on the angry train, and hopefully that's not the customer. Right. So he was like pretending to be angry on behalf of the customer, and then the customer started to calm down,
Mm.
and then that's helped to resolve quite a fair bit of that conflict. So lots of really, really great advice. And I would like to kind of round up the session, as I'm conscious of our time here. Um, we were talking about as a thematically, right? As a topic, growing your career, right? Um, what advice would you sort of like wish that you have received earlier in your career, right? Or even now, with the benefit of hindsight, what advice would you be giving someone
Mm.
who's coming to the industry or is trying to grow in the industry? Yeah.
Um, a lot of the advice I wish I got earlier is things I've said today. And it's so I'm grateful for the compliments you've paid me, but know that I've made all of the mistakes. I've tried to, and that's how I've learned. I've tried to steamroll through projects and learned from that mistake too. So a lot of the advice I'm giving is advice that I've learned myself and that I'm working on myself. Um, I think the biggest one was something I've really struggled with, and it's an occupational hazard for designers, is perfectionism. And we suffer from perfectionism, and it comes with the territory. As an editor, my entire job was to make content perfect, to make an article perfect. So there's a dark side to it, as we all know. And perfectionism can slow things down. It can cause unnecessary conflict because there is no perfect screen, there is no perfect design, there is no perfect um, flow, there is no perfect string, there is no perfect content. So learning that very good is a great result has been the lesson of my life, I think. So I wish that early on, before I suffered through my perfectionism for years, someone had told me, um, aim for very good. Don't aim for perfect because there's no such thing. If you've got to very good, that's an amazing result, especially in with the limitations we're all working through. So that would be one. And somebody entering the industry today, I would be very pragmatic and say, listen, this industry at the moment is in a disruptive moment. It is in a period of transition. And uh, that is going to result in a lot of change, a lot of, in meta, we said thrash, um, things constantly changing, uh, job descriptions changing, opportunities changing, headcount being clawed back, roles being changed, your portfolio being moved. All of that is a result of the state of the economy that we're in, and that is trickling down to designers. So I would say that know that that is happening in the background and that's not about you. But there is an opportunity in there. There is an opportunity in chaos, and you just have to look for that opportunity. Where is a place where I can contribute? Where is a place where my skills are needed? Where is a place where I can solve a problem and nobody else can? Um, and if you bring patience and curiosity, and depersonalizing things, this is just how the industry is going. It's really not about me or anything I did. You'll go very far. But draw deep on your resilience and curiosity because it's a wild ride at the moment for everybody, even for me. It's a wild ride.
And thank you for summarizing and surmising what you have shared in those couple of words of advice for everyone, including people who are in the industry, including people who are looking to come into the industry. I echo very deeply with your words, Sabina, about how we are in a very interesting time, a very chaotic time as well, as you have so described it. And we certainly need a lot of curiosity and perhaps a great dose of courage in the process to manage this change. Well, I mean, maybe one last question just to end off. How do you stay courageous? How do you stay curious?
Hmm. How do I stay courageous and stay curious? Um, it's the zooming out and looking at the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why do I work? I work because I want to be a contributing member of society. I work because I want to provide for my family and give myself and them the life that I want. I work because I want to do something meaningful and give back for everything I've received. I don't work to create the most perfect screen ever in existence. I don't work to be everybody's best friend at the office. So if you're clear on your why, there's a lot of things that fall into place from there. So be very clear on why you're there. Are you there to, you know, be the like top performer every single year? Oof, if that's your why, good luck, man. More power to you. That's not my why. I'm very clear on my why, and that my why is different from my coworkers' why. So if you know where you're going and why you're doing it, yeah, it really helps you have perspective, stay excited and curious and stay brave.
Lovely. And with that, thank you, Sabina, for being part of our conversation today and sharing your wisdom, sharing your work experience, sharing examples about what we can do as designers, as product folks who are trying to navigate this very complex and chaotic world right now. For anyone who's interested to connect with Sabina, you can reach out to her on LinkedIn. Sabina Fernandez. So feel free to reach out to her. And I'm sure there's so much more she's gonna sort of like write about and share as she's also on her own learning journey doing her master's as well. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you for our next session.
Thank you so much, Daylon. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for all your insights too. I learned from you as well. And it's been so much
Awesome.
fun.
Yeah.